The beauty with visuals is you can really use whatever you want. You can use Blender, you can use Unreal. It's just exploring new tools all the time. So if you're already into something, create your content with that.
This is Jascha, a digital artist and VJ, known for mesmerizing live concert visuals that have captivated audiences worldwide. He has collaborated with legends like Afterlife, creating unforgettable experiences for thousands of fans. Jascha also shares behind-the-scenes content and educational tips online, inspiring a growing global audience.
How did you get the Afterlife gig?
Very funny story, because I was in Vienna at this networking event.
What's the craziest last-minute story that you have?
For the show, I have 2 laptops, right? Sometimes the LED walls, like the video controllers, they just don't. And so I couldn't play from this machine. The people were already coming in for the show, and I was basically recording the visuals from one machine onto the other one. And at the end of the show, I really managed to play everything, and it was so satisfying.
What are the steps in order to create those visuals?
You always want to support the music and tell a story that matches the whole experience of the sound.
You've done some amazing work. We're talking about MDLB Soundstorm. You were there in Saudi Arabia. You went to Printworks, which is Farhad's favorite venue. You've toured with K&D and Afterlife, which is fascinating. What is a role of a VJ for anybody that doesn't know? Jascha, welcome to the Bad Decisions podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. Super excited.
Absolutely, my friend. It is a pleasure to have you. And I gotta say, me and Farhad have been enthusiastic about this episode since we DM'd you on Instagram just about a few days ago. Now, I gotta give a little bit of a backstory to everybody here because we've been following Jascha for a very long time now on Instagram. And as a VJ, he's been sharing some amazing content behind the scenes, breakdowns of all the technical hardware that he uses, all the way to behind the scenes of how he creates the creative for the visuals and the tours that he does all around the world.
And it's very rare to see this kind of content on social media.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Not a lot of people are sharing this kind of work. And I got to give you a little bit of backstory about me and Farhad. Me and Farhad, not a lot of people know this, but we're in love with electronic music. We go to festivals and we listen to electronic music when we work and when we go to the gym. So it's our bread and butter.
Amazing.
And
Amazing,
when you share content about it,
The behind the scene?
it got us hooked immediately. And then we started going into the behind the scenes and then figuring out how you do things. And it was so fascinating. So I hope that by the end of this episode, people will watch and listen to this podcast and go check out your content because it's truly amazing. Now, the question I have for you is this, because you've done some amazing work. We're talking about MDLB Soundstorm. You were there in Saudi Arabia. You went to Printworks, which is Farhad's favorite venue, one that he wanted to go to.
And so good.
I wanted to go there too. You've toured with likes of K&D and Afterlife, which is fascinating. So the question I have for you is this. First things first, what is a role of a VJ for anybody that doesn't know?
Yeah, it's a good question, because the thing is, I think most people don't really realize when they're like at concerts and at events, especially for like electronic music, that there's actually like a person responsible for like the visual side of things. There's also like a separate guy like in charge of the lighting. And so you have like all of these lasers, all of these departments, you know, and visuals is like one of the very like, well, it became over the last years like a very, very important medium of those kinds of events, right? Because it's just, you have these massive stages of like LED screens and you got to put some stuff on there, right? So that's kind of the role of the VJ. And also what I'm doing is like trying to think about shows in terms of like, visually supporting the DJ.
How did you get interested about VJing and how did you even start your journey in this?
Yeah, so I mean, to go like all the way back, it's very connected to like 3D work too, right? So I got into cinema 4D when I was like probably 15 years old or something. And I was playing Call of Duty with my friends, right?
Yes.
And we were doing these like sniper montages, right? Like doing these kind of, like FaZe Clan and these people were doing back then. Yeah. And so I got into like the editing of all of that and just binge watch tutorials from like Video Copilot, Grayscale Gorilla, like all of the legends.
Dude, and, everybody starts with Video Copilot.
Of course.
Everybody starts with Video Copilot.
Well, we have to give a shout out to Nick from Grayscale Gorilla. He's doing an amazing job as well.
For sure, for sure. No, it was super inspiring, and it was also so cool, you know, that it was so approachable, right? To do this like 3D work. And so I was watching tutorials like how to do motion tracking and put some like text into the scenes of the gameplays. So that was kind of how I got into like the 3D work. And then when I started going out to events, like I always wanted to do something there, you know, not to only go out, but actually like work at the events. So at first I got into photography and did like photos of like the events. And then I met a friend there who goes by the name of Moving Eyes, and she did the visuals for the events.
Right.
So in like the town where I come from, St. Bertin, like it's like 30,000 people town, like city, and there's like 2 clubs, and one of them is like the more commercial club, and the other one is more like the underground where you have like the drum and bass parties and that kind of stuff. And so we were doing visuals, or she was doing visuals there for these parties. And what we would do is like hang up just like these styrofoam boards and like kind of these constructs, like stage designs that we made ourselves, and then just project onto them. We didn't have like LED walls and all of that stuff that you have now, like at these huge events.
Wow,
it was
so
just
you were
really
doing
like
project mapping.
Yeah, we were doing projection mapping, and we were like building our own stage designs. And for every, like, I got into these kinds of events, right? So we were doing like a drum and bass party with like a couple of friends of mine, and we were doing one like party a month, where every time we would think of like a new stage design that we would set up and then project onto it with just like home projectors.
That's
so it was
really
like super
cool.
do-it-yourself.
This is so the DIY stuff that you started doing, was this before you were 18 or after? Like this is underage stuff, going to all these parties and then
I mean,
wanna get arrested now.
you can go out with 16 in Austria. So it's like I was 16. So like
damn.
right when
That's
right when I
lucky, man.
was allowed to. Yeah.
So
And it was
then-
super cool.
Then this was also a really good excuse to go to parties once a month at the same time. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, it was fun.
No, but
wasn't
also
it?
I have to do something. Like it's for me, I always wanna like have some output, you know, like it's just in my, how I'm wired kind of.
Let me ask you a question. What were you doing during the time in terms of studies? Were you studying in high school, college, university, or were you just doing this full time? Like you wanted to do projection
No, it
mapping
was-
for
so-
clubs and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, this was while I was still at like high school, which it was a music high school. It had very little to do. Well, didn't have anything to do with it specifically.
Thanks for the honesty.
No, I mean, and it was just, you know, as I said, like learning through YouTube and through these friends. And it was really like a blessing to have the space and this club where there's so much room for like experimentation, right? And I think this is something super valuable if you just find like a place where you can just experiment and try stuff out. Because when it comes to like these professional productions, there's not so much space to experiment, you know, because it's all like there's all of these pipelines that are already figured out, you know, and it's super nice when you can do just like, let's try this and see if it works. And if it doesn't, you know, try again next time.
Yeah, who cares? You fail and break things until you learn.
Exactly. That's the
So
way.
from that once a month stage building project, how did you turn it into VJing and then going into events and touring with all these DJ?
I guess it really happened just through like over time. This event that we were hosting, it was called Fasten Your Seatbelts, and like once a year we would do it in a bigger venue. So not in the like local nightclub, but in actual like concert hall venue. And this was the first time where I was able to like play on LED screens. And it was really exciting for me because it like once again completely opened a whole new world for me, like in terms of creativity and also like how like the medium is just completely different, right? With projection, you're kind of limited in terms of power. I mean, not if you have some crazy projectors, but you know, we had like a little home projector. So
Yeah.
it's really, so most of the content that I made back then for these parties was like super reduced, minimal, and black and white. And black and white just because you have the maximum contrast. That's like the most light that you can get out of the projector.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you have like an LED wall, and it's like you have to actually dim it down to not, you know, be too bright because it's just so powerful. And all of a sudden you have like so much more possibilities, and it was really exciting. So, and from there, it kind of evolved. Like the production that hosted this, like the bigger events that we did, was also doing some of the bigger festivals in Austria. And so that was kind of the gateway. We got in touch, and then we did some of the bigger festivals like Frequency Festival and Beat Patrol. So,
what do you think was the reason they kept calling you back to come and do all these shows?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's really not a lot of people doing this kind of stuff. It's interesting, and that's also why I'm doing what I'm doing, is just to introduce more people into this whole scene, because it's super exciting. But yeah, at the time, I think it was a nice combination, because the production, they were a lighting designer, a video technician, and then it was me, who was more like in charge of the actual content. And so this was a nice mix, because you actually, because I was actually the one who really thought, okay, we have the screen now, what are we going to put on it, So, and then really get into like specific content production for the stages, like mapping, 3D stuff, specifically for the setup and that kind of stuff.
That's really awesome. I mean, when you think about it, how many years are we talking here in terms of experience since you first started with that once a month small club to going now and touring? How long was that period?
Honestly, it went pretty fast. It was actually, it's a good question. I mean, we did like the bigger festivals, and then the next step for me was when K&D contacted me.
Right. Because
that was like, my goal was always, I was doing these festivals, but when you're like the when you're working for the festival, you're basically what you would call the house VJ. So what you do is you support either the other VJs that come with an artist that have like a specific show designed for this artist. And if there's no VJ with an artist, you either get like a download link to the pack of visuals that they provide, or you just play freestyle whatever you have. So like over the course of the whole festival, it's like this mix of doing a bunch of different stuff, and it's really interesting and it's exciting. But I really wanted to do like an actual show, like design a show from start to finish, where you can actually like build moments and tell a story, So that was always kind of my goal. And when K&D approached me, it was like mind blowing for me. That so it's actually a funny story, because like at the time it was a good friend of mine that I didn't really know back then. We were just chatting a bit on Instagram. Oscar Pecher is his name, and he actually recommended me to K&D because they were talking about visuals, and so they basically only saw my Instagram. That's all they knew from me, and they instantly like contacted me and were like, "Yeah, can we meet?" And
what were you posting on your Instagram at the time?
So yeah, back at the time it was interesting, because it was still the time when dailies were more of a thing.
Oh,
so like daily renders.
Always the dailies.
It's always
dailies. Always freaking
it pays off. It pays off. Absolutely.
Wait a minute. This is episode 53. I think we had more than 20 guests that have told you the concept of daily works. Just go and do it daily.
It worked with us, with our vlogs. It worked with Nick from Grayscale Gorilla. It worked with many other people.
So many, bro. I think more than 20.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
No, I mean, it's. I think it just changed the way like what we post now. So like now it's more of like, showing yourself and talking to the camera and this kind of stuff. But back at the time, it was like just doing some artwork and then posting that, right? And yeah, I was doing that just to learn, more of cinema, because it is really like a good practice to just do anything like every day.
Yes. No, the point of the everydays is that you have that 24-hour time limit where you have to create something. It doesn't matter what it is, you have to create something. And guess what? This is exactly what happens when a client comes to you for a one-night show, or an entire festival comes to you for a 3-hour long show or a 10-hour long show. It's just a difference in time frame. Sometimes you will have 1 month,
Yeah,
but that 1 month is for a gigantic piece of content. But that every day is for content that you're uploading at night. And that constraint makes you so creative. The first 7 days are so painful, but then the 8th day and the 9th day, when you start getting on the roll and you understand exactly how your brain works, these ideas just come freely. And then you just create. You get in the flow state. And I love that flow state. There's nothing like that. You improve, you learn.
Nobody complains about daily.
Nobody complains about daily. And if you post about it, you can get clients from your favorite people, and you can also get a lot of traction right now on social media.
Absolutely. Of course. And also, you're doing what you like, and you're also going to do stuff that really comes from your heart, right? So like when people come to you and see that kind of stuff, they're going to be like, oh, I want this. Can you do this for me? So, the people already come to you because of what you're doing.
Yes.
And that's also like the key.
And the beautiful part about it is that, I don't know how your daily was, but when we did our daily for vlogs, when we did our daily for 3D renders, doesn't matter what it was, people think that when you want to be creative, it's always about just coming up with an idea instantly in your head. It's actually not that. It's basically you taking A and B, mixing it up together, and adding a little bit of your own flavor. So you see A on social media, on an Instagram post, you see B on Pinterest, and then you mix them up together, and then you add a little bit of your own flavor, and then you do that just as many times as you can, and then people will call you creative. That's what creativity is. You just mix different things.
Yes. No,
it's stealing other people's work, but
like
then
an
adding,
artist.
like an artist.
Do you like an artist? Exactly.
Yes, exactly. So that's the beauty of it. Can we just stay on the concept of the daily just for a little bit before we move on? How long did you do that for, and what did you gain from it outside? I mean, KD is definitely one thing, but what else in terms of skills and knowledge?
Oh, it was definitely a lot of knowledge in terms of Cinema 4D, because that was mainly what I'm working with. I did it for not longer than half a year.
Wow.
Because at some point...
calm down, man. That's a long time.
We did 60 days.
Yeah.
We did 60 days and we were like, wow.
It's 100 and something days, man. That's crazy. That's really good. That's really
amazing.
No, something around that, like 5 months. I don't remember, but it was a couple of months. But at some point, it gets exhausting. But I also, already could look back at like a proper feed. And I was also super obsessed with like, getting the grid and like having a nice clean grid on Instagram, and always like sorting it into kind of chapters. So like I would always explore specific concepts. And that's in general like an approach that I love to take. Is what is a big inspiration for me is the tool itself. So like I'm going to go into cinema and I'm going to see what is there, like what are the functions, what are the possibilities to do here, like right off the bat, So that first of all makes it easy, because sometimes it's really complicated and overwhelming if you have an idea and want to realize it. Mm-hmm. And then you realize how complicated it actually is to realize. So, the first step is just to actually learn the fundamentals of the tool. But it's also, first of all, it's a really nice constraint that you set yourself. And constraints are always important. You always need to work in some kind of framework. Yes. And then the other constraint that I would set myself is like a very reduced like visual language, so minimalism. And,
interesting.
And really keeping it clean. And then, so to go back, like to connect it to visuals for a bit, what's really a powerful technique with visuals is when you have a black background, because then it seems like an object is floating in the air, right? If you have like a big screen and there's something on black, then it's just like, if that makes sense, like it's just this object. And so this is something that I really stuck to in terms of creating the dailies, like always some kind of objects, or like sculptures or whatever you want to call it, and then rendering those out, working with materials, lighting, and then always taking it step by step. So like once I would look at just the shape and everything would be black and white, and then I would try to add color, and then okay, let's have a look at color as a concept, and always just taking it step by step. And that way it really allows you to learn kind of the fundamentals and really go step by step.
I love that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
There's one more thing that you mentioned. I think we kind of skipped over that, which is what you called a house VJ. Is that what you called it just earlier on?
Yes.
So you said that other DJs would come, and then if their VJ couldn't make it, you'll get all the visuals, and then you'll have to sort of freestyle sometimes as well?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it really depends. Some DJs tour with a VJ and some
Yes.
don't. So when there's no one coming, then it's the festival or the festival VJ, the house VJ, who is doing the show for the DJs. And sometimes they get content from the DJ, and sometimes they don't.
Wow.
So technically, sometimes he didn't have any.
No, but he needed
No,
to
but
use
then
his own
you have your own.
content.
Like, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But spontaneously on the spot,
Yeah,
you have.
yeah. So
okay.
that's the
art.
That's I know that's art, but
That's what Joris was talking about. So we have a very good friend. Shout out to Joris.
Shout out to Joris.
He was our guest on the podcast. I think episode 12.
Yes.
So he was also talking about his experience. So it's really an art form doing it.
Yes.
Yes,
And
yeah,
I
absolutely.
want to go back to K&D's story, and then we want to talk about the entire process of VJing. Yeah. So the K&D story, you got the DM. They asked you to become their tour VJ. What happened after that?
Yeah, well, so actually first they contacted me and said like, yeah, can we meet in Vienna? And I was like, yeah, sure. It's just the problem is that I'm currently living in London, in England, because I was on a semester abroad. And they were like, no problem. We are touring and we're playing in the Roundhouse in London, and we can meet there. And
Amazing. That's amazing.
And so we met there, and we instantly really like connected in terms of like our vision. And we stayed in touch after that, but it was not immediate that they weren't like, yeah, do a show now. Like, so it was, we were working together for like some music videos and other projects. And then after a while, they asked if I wanted to produce their show. And that, of course, for me was like incredible opportunity. And so what happened then is we had a show in Berlin, in the Philharmonie, like the concert hall. And it was really exciting because it's not like a classical venue. Well, it's a classical venue, but it's not a typical venue for a DJ setup.
Yeah,
exactly. And so it was also quite a challenge because I knew there would be a lot of focus on the visuals because people were actually seated. And it was, I mean, how long was that ago? Actually, I don't know, but for me, it was still like I had some experience, but this was like really the next step, and it was kind of nerve-wracking too, you know. So
I can only imagine.
So we had like I think about 2 months or something to like create the entire show, and a good friend of mine, Matthias Finding, he helped me create this whole Touch Designer patch. We would do this whole like real-time patch inside of Touch Designer where we could also do like play some visuals that are completely generative, so completely real-time, which means you can tweak some stuff and it's actually rendered right on the go instead of being some finished clips. So we spent like a whole time, like a lot of time on building this setup, and then also building some other content. And until the final rehearsals, they didn't see the show.
Oh shit!
So it was actually, they were just trusting us.
Wow.
So it was it was actually really, really like nerve-wracking until the last minute, because
they didn't regret trusting you, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. But so there was this moment when they came to the studio, and you know, I would show them like all the stuff that we've done, and they loved it. And at this point, it was like,
that's amazing. That's
amazing.
That's kind of last minute to love something, but you guys must have done such a great job.
Yeah, no, it was really, really exciting for us. Like even now, looking back at what we created in this, like we're back at the deadline phenomenon,
yes,
as you can call it. What we created in this time frame was pretty crazy. Even if I look back on it now, like this whole system, it's really complex, and I'm still using it to that day. even though the whole show changed a lot, but we basically built our own VJ software from scratch. Because Touch Designer is this on Touch Designer.
Okay, on Touch Designer.
And so I don't know how familiar you are with Touch Designer,
you should
but
break
it's like
down from basics so everybody would
Exactly.
understand.
Could you explain what Touch Designer is for everybody?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. So Touch Designer is this node-based visual programming language, which you've probably come across nodes in some way or another.
In 3D software,
if you'll have it.
when you're doing your materials, more often than not, you're dealing with nodes.
Exactly. And so in Touch Designer, just the entire program is based off of nodes. But then you have like the possibility to input and output any kind of data. So you can input sound, MIDI, network, any type of data, and then output video, lights, anything. So it's really just this like huge, conglomerate of many types of different data types, but it's also a really powerful tool for doing visual programming and for doing shows. And it's getting more and more popular, especially for visuals.
So when you mentioned that you guys made your own VJ software, you guys made patches of nodes that was unique to you guys, and then you were using it over and over again.
Exactly. So we kind of had to build, first of all, build the entire interface, because there is no interface for your performance inside of Touch Designer. You actually have to build everything from scratch. So you have to think, okay, when I look at the screen, what do you want to see and how do you want to control it? And then also you have your MIDI controllers, where you kind of control all the stuff, all the parameters. And then you have to think, how do you want to map specific parameters to the MIDI controller in order to play it like an instrument, in essence, right? So what you're doing is actually you're kind of jamming on this instrument live to the music, and every time you play, it's a different show.
Very interesting.
That's fascinating. How long did you guys spend on creating that patch? And what would you say is the most sophisticated or exciting feature of what you guys created that is so special?
So I think we spent like around a month building it, like the initial version, and then the most exciting thing about it is probably that it's very reduced, because oftentimes you can overcomplicate things.
Yes, of course.
Because you think, you need this function and you need this function. But when you're in the live setting, you need to move fast, and you cannot fuck up, right? It's like you can't have a button that just destroys everything, or that you forget to like undo. So then you're like clicking around, not knowing what happened, right? So you really have to make it bulletproof. And the way we laid it out for like the APC40, which is this kind of standard MIDI controller that a lot of people are using, and just every fader and every button would have a specific function, and then I could load in a patch, and depending on the patch, the same fader would do something else. It's a little bit hard to explain right now, but it's like, in essence, you're always moving the same faders. There's just a different visual output.
That's interesting. The simplest way I can break it down is as if you're playing a video game and you control your joystick,
exactly.
and then you're adding in new shortcuts. Exactly. That's really cool.
They're always doing the same thing. You're just always in a different level.
Yes.
So that's kind of the way to think about it. It's your
Exactly.
joysticks, but it's always something different that you're controlling with the same types of fader.
Yes.
When you guys are planning for a show, let's take it to the step one. When someone comes to you like Candy and say, "Hey, let's do a show together. You guys have to be the VJ." What are the steps necessary for you guys to take in order to create those visuals? Is it ideation, the Touch Designer part, the parts that comes after that?
Well, first of all, it really depends on the type of show that you want to do. And sometimes the DJs, they already come with an idea. So they would say, we want to because you always want to support the music and tell a story that matches the whole experience of the sound, right? Yep. And so And so sometimes they would say they already have some idea of like some more like world-driven visuals. Sometimes it's more abstract. And depending on the type of show, it really changes the whole workflow, I would say. But of course, at first comes the ideation process. And then you once it's approved, then you start working on it. And then there's also a lot of ways to go about actually creating visuals for a show in terms of how you plan it, because you can still keep it more open and still have visuals that would fit any kind of track, but you can also have specific like time-coded visuals that are very specific on one track.
Right.
And so the beautiful thing with K&D is that the show really has everything that like the visual, like the medium visuals has to offer. So one track would be this, the other track would be the other, like completely different style. One track would be some filmed footage. The other is going to be like a 3D animation. Then there's just like, you can also, work text-based. So maybe just support with like the lyrics or just say something, It's like, the beauty of it is it's such a free medium that you can really do anything. And it's just really a matter of forming an idea that really helps tell a story for this specific show.
I think the best way, you clearly explained it to us, but the best way to go about it is, for me and Farhad, we have a little bit of experience because we watched a lot of your videos. But for someone who's hearing about this for the first time, there's the creative prep and then there's the technical prep, right? Creative prep being
absolutely.
You coming up with the ideas for what the visuals are going to be. And the technical prep, for instance, if it's projection mapping, we also have to describe what projection mapping is for anybody that doesn't know. But I think a great example, if you wanted to set it apart, one of them was at Soundstorm. You did projection mapping, which was fascinating. And you're covering that on YouTube. So let's talk about that first. What is projection mapping and how did you plan technically for an event like that and then creatively as well?
Right. So I think what's also important to mention here is that those parts are often separated into different departments and different people. So there's also oftentimes going to be like a production company that comes to you. They already have it planned out and they and you're just like operating the show and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And in this case, it was also the same thing. So Vision Factory, who did like the entire stage designs, they came to me as like we were a huge crew of VJs for like different stages. And so I was in charge of this stage where there was a projection mapping. And essentially, it was also interesting because usually with the projection mapping, you would get like the whole. So okay, let's maybe explain what projection mapping is.
Yes, exactly. I think that would be more helpful. Yes.
So projection mapping is basically when you use a projector to project onto a surface that is not just a 16:9 rectangle, but it's an actual 3D object. That can be a building, it can be a stage design, it can be anything basically. And another and one of the key aspects to projection mapping is that you adjust your content so it specifically fits onto this object. And so this way you can really create like illusions of space and illusions of the object like falling apart and having some light and shadow and all of this kind of stuff on the object itself. And it's a beautiful art form. And it's really exciting to work on this. Very complex, but very rewarding at the same time once you like see the final result.
I think that's the best way to describe it, honestly. Best way. And for anybody that wants to still watch a video about it, you've covered it in detail. There's so many videos on YouTube. But I think the best way is how you described it. Now, for Soundstorm, you were doing projection mapping. So what did you do in that process to go ahead and create that model of the stage and then project whatever that you came up with on the stage?
Right. So I also go into detail about this in a video. But what I did essentially is that first you have to, for projection mapping, you have to recreate the model in 3D. So it can go both ways. Either you have the 3D model first and then you build the actual model, or you have the actual model first and then you recreate it in 3D. In this case, I didn't even have the model before because we had so much time on site. We had like a week of prep, which is very unusual. So
okay.
so we got there, and until I saw the stage, I didn't actually know what it was going to look like, which was also really exciting because once you're on location, so once I was on location, I could then work in a little bit of a different workflow than I would usually do because I already have like the object. So I could like take a picture of it from the view that you always have like a sweet spot perspective with projection mapping, which is kind of like in the center. And from this, the projection will look best. And so I took a picture from there and then recreated the whole 3D structure. And then once I had that, I would just like, recreate it in Cinema. And then you have this playground where you can just play around and create some content on like based on that structure. So it can be as simple as just making some outlines of the edges up until like creating, some really trippy shadow illusions where things are moving around, and once you start adding light to that, it really becomes a very magical experience.
How do you work with different, because you mentioned you are not only doing, there is not only the VJ part, there's light, laser, pyro, smoke. How do you guys integrate your experiences together? Because, for example, if you're doing a show, the light and the lasers should match with the visuals that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's also always kind of a little bit different, I guess. But if you have like a completely structured, planned out show, then everything is going to be more timed. I mean, you're always on comms, so like connected to the others and you can talk to them. So you can really, set some moments. And for planned shows, there's going to be like a kind of schedule where everyone knows what's going to happen. And then for more like of these festival shows that I was talking about, when you have like the house VJ and the house lighting designer, the house lasers, then you will have, you just gotta communicate and talk to each other and then really time it. Because what's also really important is that you don't want to overload it, right? You don't want to blast everything full on all the time. You really want to create some moments.
Yeah.
Just as with the music, right? It goes up and down. You like create tension, have a drop, then you go into the breakdown. So you want to do the same thing with like all the visual aspects of it too. So you can have like a moment just for lasers where there's no visuals at all, right? And then it's gonna be super impactful. And you come back with the visuals, and that's really how you build up through. If you have to do an entire night, you really don't want to show off everything like from the
in
first
one
hour,
go.
right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, absolutely. And then if you have the visuals and then the lights are blasting, you can't see the visuals. So you have to be very careful about how you deal with everything.
Exactly.
It's very interesting because I would really encourage people to go and check out your YouTube videos on the Soundstorm stage. Very intricately detailed. But let's talk about projection mapping versus LEDs. I mean, we covered that a little bit. What is your favorite tool? If you were to choose for your own show that you're doing, would you go for LEDs and projection mapping? And what do you think is the advantage of each?
It's a tough one. I mean, look, LEDs have really become the kind of standard for these types, like these big stages and events, which also makes them kind of repetitive. So like at some point, it's like, okay, we've tried out like every stage design, and there's still a lot of really, really innovative stage designs. But if it's really hard to say. Like both mediums have their advantages and disadvantages. Again, as I said, with LEDs, you can really have some very impactful, powerful light. So you can really work with the LED wall as a light source itself. Now with projection, it's more of like a different approach where you really have to watch out with the lighting to not overcast the projection. Mm-hmm. In terms of the content, with projection mapping, you're also very limited because you can only do it on one specific setup. So a lot of times it's just so much work that goes into like one single night or event, and then it's all gone. And then you can all the content, goes out the window because you can't reuse it unless you have the exact same
same stage,
So,
which is not often. You're right.
No,
damn.
no, exactly.
But for a touring DJ, does it even make sense to do projection mapping? Because every festival they go, the stage would be different.
Exactly. That's the point. That's why LEDs are kind of the standard now, because most of the content isn't really like, once you go into making content specific for one single stage, then you're locked into that. And that's why most DJs will just produce like clips that are standard 16:9 format. And then you can play it on any stage. And then it's also the responsibility of the VJ to think about, okay, how you have this one image, how do you want to play it on the stage setup? Because you could have like multiple screens and this kind of stuff. And that's also what Joris made an amazing plugin for Resolume, where you can actually, like, that does exactly this, where it's called Stage Flow, and you can think about how you want to project one image multiple times onto a very complex stage setup.
So we covered slightly Touch Designer on what that is. There's another software that you constantly mention in all of your videos, which is Resolume, and you brought it up just now, and it's part of your workflow as well. You call it your media server, but could you also describe what that is to everybody?
Yeah, sure. So the media server is basically just a fancy word for your PC that you're playing the content from. And Resolume is kind of the industry standard in terms of like VJing live and doing live visuals. So what Resolume does is basically you can play back video clips, and then you have, like, what's the key feature about it is that you have this mapping functionality, which means that you can work with these complex stage setups and complex LED screens that aren't just rectangles, but you actually have to think about all of these different parts. Now, Resolume is also a really powerful tool in terms of mixing content, and it has some effects, and it's just a very, very powerful tool in general to do any sort of stuff in this field.
What I'm curious about now is your usual softwares of choice. Then would be Touch Designer and Resolume, or sometimes you also go into Cinema 4D to create some of the content, and you connect that with Resolume and then send it to the LED or send it to the projector. But is there any other software that you started using? Because we know that there's the Blender users out there. There's Unreal Engine now.
Unreal, bro.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then there's Houdini as well. So Cinema 4D, of course, we know exactly why you use it. You use it, for instance, from your videos. You take that wall that you have, and then you do a fracture on the wall, and then you create an effect using an effector, and then you take that, and then you bring it into your video. Have you tried using other software, or have you seen people use Blender, Unreal, or Houdini in the same workflow?
Absolutely.
How does it work?
Absolutely. Well, Blender, Cinema, they're interchangeable, right? They all based on the same principles. And if I started now, I would definitely go with Blender, just because the community has grown so much, and there's so much, so much tutorials, and it's free. So, so you can't go wrong with that. Same with Unreal, right? So, yeah, so the beauty with visuals is you can really use whatever you want. You can use, like, in terms of the content creation, right? Because when it comes to playing back, Resolume, that's the standard, right? But the video clips themselves, the content, where you create that's your choice as an artist. So you can use like an iPhone app. You can use Blender, you can use Unreal, you can use some like coding language, right? It's just really about like your imagination is the limit. And that's also what I love about it so much and that's what I'm so passionate about, is just exploring new tools all the time. And then there's like a new plugin coming out for After Effects, and I'm going to use that for for this part of the show. And there's like, maybe I'm going to do one thing with a meta-human character. Well, actually, I'm not sure if you can use that in terms of the rights, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's really, really use your tool of choice. So if you're already into something, just create your content with that,
The reason why I was asking that is because with Unreal, of course, I know Unreal itself can connect to these media servers in an interactive way. I haven't tested it out myself, but there's so many tools inside Unreal that allow you to do that. But then, is that something you've already tried yourself? Is that something you're looking into with Unreal Engine? Because it's...
Faraz is trying to push
I'm just trying to push it down.
agenda.
I'm very curious because Unreal is used for so many things.
Yes. No, there's actually even Ghost Team is actually producing, like creating these plugins or kind of like VJ packs that are real time inside of Unreal Engine. So you can actually kind of play back from Unreal and then really integrate like the colors of the lighting and all that kind of stuff. So there's some really, really interesting possibilities there. I've tried to approach it a couple of times and I've used it for some specific stuff, but I just didn't get too deep into the whole like workflow and the different way of thinking that you have inside of Unreal. And Cinema is it's very native for this kind of motion graphic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, so
yeah, but Unreal
just released
added motion graphics.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually true.
So we have effectors now.
Wait a minute.
We have effectors too now.
Absolutely.
The podcast is not sponsored
by
by
Unreal
Epic
Engine.
Games. We are not getting paid saying all of this. But jokes aside, have you tried the motion design?
Unreal has effectors now, and
Jonathan Wimbush released some tutorials on them.
Yes, he did. Yeah. Yes, and there's more people releasing tutorials. I mean, it's very early on, and you probably can expect some errors. Whereas if you were to do it in Cinema 4D with effectors, you wouldn't probably hit any bugs, or at least as many bugs as you would here. With Blender, now you have geometry nodes, which allow you to create procedural content, which is exactly what you want for your kind of work. But then with Houdini, it's very complex. I understand people's brains are probably smoking right now thinking about Houdini. But because Houdini allows you to create everything procedurally, have you seen people hook that up to something like Resolume? I'm just curious because I actually don't know if that works.
Well, so funny thing is Houdini and Touch Designer are actually kind of have the same origin.
What?
So they are kind of branches. And Touch Designer is the real-time version of Houdini. So now we have a shorter definition of Touch Designer.
Are they
why
from
didn't
the
you
same
start
company?
the podcast with that?
Are they from the same company? Side Effects is...
I'm not sure how exactly it works. I just know that they are somehow connected and you also have very similar operators.
So
in Touch Designer also everything is called... Yeah, for sure.
Bro, wait, so is Touch Designer...
And chops and softs
you have the same pops and dops and all that?
It's very similar, very similar. So
I was planning to learn Touch Designer, man.
Faraz will be the VJ from the next event.
Oh yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Dude, damn, that's crazy.
Some real-time magic.
Because, sorry, Farhad, I'm stealing the show here for a little bit. I'm just trying to focus on the hardware and the software. Because Houdini... I'm looking at someone like Afterlife. I don't know what they're using. I'm guessing it's Houdini because the stuff they're creating is really well done as well. But they're creating mostly videos, right?
Yes.
Well, the beautiful thing is with Afterlife, they are curating and they're working together with a lot of different artists. So yes, it will be everything because there's Houdini artists, there's these artists, and
And then there is you as well. And then there's you as well. But got to give a shout out to our guest here on the podcast.
Actually, how did it? Let's
we gotta talk about that.
Let's get the story. How did you get the Afterlife gig?
That was actually also a very funny story because I was in Vienna at this networking event, which was kind of this like TV broadcasting conference, like revolving around the future of television and so this kind of like super random, imagine like business people with like name cards and that kind of vibe. And then there was like one room that was dedicated to like a virtual art festival, Cyber. And Michael Tietze, who is the like visual artist of Afterlife, he like basically the main visual artist, he was giving a keynote there. I didn't know about it. I was just sitting in this room and he starts like talking about his work, and I was just sitting in that room, and it was so random to meet in this context, because it was like the last place that I would expect it. And so we got in touch, and then we just kept in touch. And at some point, they were looking for someone, to help out for the show. I mean, look, it's a huge team, and I also don't want to like speak on anyone else's behalf because I just recently joined. But super, super exciting production, and
Afterlife, I think for the past few years has been creating, and especially Tale of Us, one of the most astonishing visuals ever. I think we just saw that they booked the Sphere for New Year's Eve for Anima's Genesis. That's crazy. That's mind-blowing.
Crazy.
Their visuals.
We went to a shisha place yesterday. And on the TV, they were playing Afterlife visuals, and
No
I don't
copyright,
know.
probably.
I don't know if it's owned by Afterlife, but they were replaying that shit.
terrible.
And then anybody coming to the restaurant would probably say, "Wow, these guys really spent some money on their visuals."
It's a real problem. It's a problem.
Yes, no,
Because you can find them on YouTube, right? Like,
of course.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And that's just in general, like with artists, it's a huge, like this ripping off other artists' content is definitely a big deal, like big problem in the whole industry. Like you can find some, websites with just loads and loads of packs from artists who spent, a lot of time making that content. And it's always support the artist, it's like, so if you can, buy them. And if you're looking for content and you think it's too expensive, just approach the artist, just write them, I'm sure they can make like a discount, because the pricing structure can be really different in different countries too, right? So there's always, I think, like most people, if you just like talk to them, I'm sure you can find like a fair deal. Just as a quick mention here.
That would actually make sense. For Afterlife, you toured with them as well, right? You toured with them, and then did you help them with any of the visuals?
Yeah, so I've been part of the team since beginning of the year, basically. We had a huge Latin America tour.
Oh, that was crazy. You guys did the biggest LED screen was it in Colombia or was it in Brazil? I think that was a record, one of the biggest LED screen in South America.
For sure, yeah. It really gets mixed up after you've been to like something. I'm not sure right now which one it was, but it was pretty incredible productions, definitely. And I also did some of the visuals.
I have a very interesting question, and I think every artist probably has that question. How the hell do you render for this gigantic LED from your computer? Because every time I try to render, my PC crashes, and I got a 4090. And I'm guessing, what resolution are you guys going for that giant of a screen?
Well, oftentimes, like once you hit a certain resolution, the thing how it works with these kind of LED screens is you have a video processor in between your computer and the LED screen, right? Mm-hmm. And so this processor, it takes like a HD signal or a 4K signal. Mostly now it's like a 4K signal. So what will happen is you send like a 4K signal, mm-hmm. and then it's gonna be like you have this kind of output maps which tells the video, like the processor where each of the slices and all of these parts are going. And so essentially you're scaling up lower resolutions like 4K.
Interesting.
Because the native resolutions are just some really arbitrary, random, like huge numbers. But your content is always going to be the same, right? If you have like different productions and different festivals, right? So you're going to produce the content in a certain format, like 4K. And then for every festival, every production, it's going to be scaled up and fit, to the actual
Will
resolution.
it still look good though? But if you scale it up, will it not look pixelated?
Not real. Well, I mean, you still have like No, actually, no. I mean, of course, if you go like super close, but the stage is huge, people are far away,
Yes.
so it's like it's really, you know, always a balance of finding the right resolution for the, you know, for the specific setup.
Very interesting. All this while we thought that we had to have a huge rendering machine. So
Yeah, I thought
basically,
that you have, like,
you guys
10
don't re-render for every event. You
Well,
just have the.
You do have, yeah, sometimes you gotta like do some upscaling and that kind of stuff. But again, with these video processors, it's like, most of the times you have like 4K signals going in and then scaling it to those different setups that you have at festivals and stuff.
Wow, interesting. We saw in your story that I think you just came back from Ibiza a few days ago. Was it a holiday or you were helping with the high Ibiza show for Afterlife?
Yeah, exactly.
As well?
No, it's the Afterlife residency. Yeah.
Oh, so you will be there every week?
I will be there every Thursday. Yeah.
Really?
In July.
So see you
Yes.
next Thursday? We're going to be there. No, we
You're gonna be there? No, wait.
No, wait. Yeah, we're serious.
Amazing.
Trying to keep it a surprise for the show. All right, so for anybody
sure.
that
All
is
right, cool.
watching
See you
this, because we're gonna
post
vlog it as well.
because we are vlogging our trip. We are going to Tomorrowland, so we are gonna see Yogis. We are gonna be at Tomorrowland weekend 1, and then we are gonna go to Ibiza. So we are gonna vlog the entire thing. So if you're gonna be there on Thursday, then
We're gonna meet up.
you.
Amazing. Awesome. Looking forward. Love it.
Amazing.
So, okay, now we're going to keep all the fun to when we meet up and then do that vlog. I want to talk about if you don't mind, by the way,
go ahead.
I want to talk about some of the integration of different elements in your show. You've done something that was truly remarkable. And I don't know if this was your own thing or you were looking at other people's work and then you tried to integrate it in your workflow. I don't know, but it was fascinating. You try to bring in lasers and have it interact with the screen. And what you were testing out looked so damn cool with the visual itself. How did this? Was that an idea of your own, or was it something that you saw somewhere else and then tried to make it even better on your own? Talk to me through that.
Yeah.
Because it's fascinating watching that video.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it was really cool working on that. Actually, it came along in the process of creating visuals for the Modus label night. So Cameron Crooked and Matthews, drum and bass DJs that I also work with a lot, they had this event, the label night. So basically kind of this night from their label. So we wanted to do like a special concept in terms of stage design or, you know, a special show. And it was this concept that I had in my mind for a while, which I've seen a lot in like a more artistic context, like from artist installations and performances. And it's not a new thing. Like I didn't invent laser mapping. So it definitely existed, you know, just taking the laser and not, you know, shooting it from stage, but actually taking it to
the stage,
to the other side and shooting it to the stage.
Wow.
And on the screen, and then mapping the screen out, and then you can like have elements interact, and you can shoot the laser, and then there's going to be asteroids exploding or something like that. And I always wanted to try this out, and this was the perfect opportunity. And it's also actually, you know, super simple in terms of the technical, like the hardware setup. You don't need to rent a huge amount of equipment. You just need one laser and the LED screen. And then all of the magic lies in the content creation. And that's also an approach that I really love taking, is like creating more from less, you know? So when working on that, I found this way to, you know, integrate the Cinema 4D and the laser software and all this stuff, so I could actually export objects from Cinema to the laser.
Huh? What does that mean?
So like the outlines of any object, I could export, because a laser can draw images, right?
Yes.
It can draw like outlines. So
Yes.
you can tell it, you know, you have this cube, draw the outlines of the cube on the laser. And then you could have the 3D cube and make it a super high-end rendering. And then you could also shoot with the laser, and the edges will be like outlined. So, so it was quite tricky, like figuring out this whole workflow, because it's really not documented. And
Of course.
and it was kind of tricky to get that set up. But once we had that running, it was really, really exciting. Like all the possibilities and the the creative things that you could do with that. Like I had some visuals with like cats shooting laser eyes, and then one with what's the game called? Like the asteroids.
I know which one you're talking about.
Pixel game.
Yes, I forgot the name though. I know which one you're talking about.
Dropping from the
Space
air,
Invaders.
right?
Space Invaders.
Space Invaders. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the Space Invaders, coming from left to right and then shooting them, and they would disappear. All of this fun stuff, and it was it was really really cool working on that, and really happy how it turned out. Yeah.
We are talking about integrating different elements. Have you considered integrating AI to the workflow that you're using?
Oh yeah, I did a lot of times. Yeah. So there's again, I'm just super excited about any new tools and possibilities to create exciting stuff. And AI is one of them now. And there's some stuff that I did with dForum, and also like the other one, like
what is dForum?
So dForum is this kind of, it's this animation like algorithm kind of that creates an image, and then you can create movement. So you can like zoom into the image, and it creates a new one every time. So it's not that big of a thing anymore, but like a couple of months ago, you'd see a lot of these animations just like zooming in and stuff.
Oh yeah,
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Zoom
Yeah.
So
keep zooming in. It's a different word and a different word. Yeah.
And it's always, but it's like super glitch, like warping
It's
around.
super trippy.
Yeah.
It's really trippy. So there's some nice ways to use that as a visual element, because what I really also love is using and embracing the mistakes of a technology.
Interesting.
And not just the mistakes, but the kind of glitches and the errors. Because if you think about like any past technology, it's always like the nostalgia lies in the errors. So, it's the crackling of the vinyl. It's the color shift of old films that are now Instagram filters. It's the glitches that are now used as effects. So it's always the errors of a certain technology that become the nostalgic aspect of it in the future. And I'm really curious what that's going to be for AI, Is it like, okay, this morphing, it really looks like that 2024 dForum style.
That's a fucking good quote. That's a fucking good quote.
The imperfection at the early stage usually
becomes
are the
nostalgia of the
Yes.
technology. That's so cool. So in 10 years' time, on Bad Decisions podcast, we'll all have white hair, and then we'll look at this moment.
I already have white hair, bro.
More white hair, and then we're gonna look back at this moment talking about that. That's really cool.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's going to be completely different. But again, more often than not, it happened that way. So. Yeah.
So right now, have you used AI in any of your shows, production ready for K&D or any other DJ?
Yeah, I have some visuals in the K&D show, for example, that are created with the help of AI, like in one part of the workflow. And then there's also this really exciting tool in Touch Designer by .simulate called, like, it's basically this stream diffusion integration for Touch Designer, which allows you to render AI images or generate AI images in real time with 60 FPS if you have a beefy graphics card.
Wow.
And that is really insane. And I've seen people use that live on location in real time. And that's really exciting. So you can actually, like, during the event, I was actually in Poland. It was really cool. They had the stage where you could scan a QR code and then input your like prompts that you wanted to see on the screen, and they would then like curate, go through it, and say like, "Oh, all right, this is cool," and then put it up. And this kind of stuff, it's exciting. It makes everything very interactive, and if you integrate it in the right way, it can be really cool.
And the thing about AI is that these images and the quality of these images, as more quality data sets are being fed to these AIs, the quality that we get in the output is even better. So I can only imagine what this is going to be over time. And the way you're using it is perhaps the best possible way to use AI? Because a lot of the artists are scared of full jobs being taken over.
Yeah,
what you're doing
for
is
sure.
you're focusing on how this can help you as a tool.
Yeah.
In part of your workflow, there's so many things you're doing. You're not just saying, okay, I'm just going to generate my images and I'm going to be lazy and this is my job. Yeah. You're using it as maybe 0.1% of a visual of a show just to help you become more creative in the process. Not necessarily to speed up processes, but to create something new. And I think that's really a wonderful way to use AI. And you have posts about this as well that people can go and check out.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I have some... I covered the different, like some of these plugins, like the stream diffusion. Mm-hmm. I have a post on that. I have some great videos on that on YouTube as well. And let me think. Well, I'm certainly going to create some more in the future. So
yes,
looking forward to that.
If someone has watched this podcast so far and they got really interested in VJing and about the things that you do, what is the best way to learn VJing in 2024?
The great thing about VJing now is that there's actually a lot of resources online. Like, still not as many as I would like, and that's why I'm creating more. But for example, Sean Bowes is doing great tutorials on just like one-on-one getting into Resolume, and so YouTube is full of resources, and also the beauty is it's really approachable because all you need is basically a laptop, computer, some sort of projector for starting out, and you can get going with like some small paper mapping stage designs. I also did like a tutorial on that, just working at home with some like folding
Kirigami?
paper, Kirigami,
yeah,
and just working with that. So it's really like. Because when you think about visuals, you always see like big stages and these, and it feels very like, how do you even start, right? Yeah. How do you do it?
We want to do Afterlife at home.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just that. You can just do some DIY projects at home, do some like small projector setups, and then maybe do visuals for a small party of some friends, and grow from there. So it's really like. It's become very approachable, and a lot of information is out there. So you can also we also have I have a Discord channel where we exchange a lot about any sort of questions for newcomers, and that's definitely also a good place to go.
That's a fantastic way for people to find out more about VJing. I mean, there's this podcast, but then there's only so much information we can cover on this podcast. If you want to go into the details, they have to come to your Discord channel, and the link, I'm assuming, is already in your Instagram and YouTube bio.
We're going to put it in the video description so everybody can see.
We'll put it down as well. What is one thing that you love the most about being a VJ and the life of being a VJ, especially after touring with the likes of Afterlife and K&D?
Honestly, it's really this moment when you're at the show, you're playing the show that you were part of the process of creating, and then you play your visuals on like a huge screen in front of thousands of people. This moment, there's nothing like it, really. It's undescribable. It's amazing. And this is why I love this. I love this, this art form, and to be able to do it as a profession.
I'm going to counter that question. What do you not like about being a VJ? What is the moment that you probably felt like shit, like, oh, this is fucked?
All right. Well, I mean, of course, it's also a very technical job. So there's a lot of technical fuck-ups that can happen. And you got to be prepared for those. It can get really stressful. It can also get really stressful because when you're trying to solve these problems, you're basically blasted by a sound of wall with like people left and right watching. So it can be quite tense. It's not like a very calm working environment. And
I think go. Let's build on that. What's the craziest last minute story that you have?
Wow. Let me think. So we had this one K&D show in Amsterdam, and what I have is like, for the show I have two laptops, right? One is playing Resolume, and the other is this Touch Designer patch that I was talking about. And for some reason, the Resolume laptop, the MacBook, sometimes the LED walls, like the video controllers, they just don't like communicate with each other properly, and you have some issues. And so I couldn't play from this machine. And now usually, of course, you would always have like a complete backup, but I've never had any problems so far. And I have like almost all of the show on the second one. But just not these Touch Designer real-time patches. And so I had to play the show from the other machine, but I still had to somehow get those Touch Designer visuals into Resolume. And so it was already like the people were already coming in for the show. And I was basically recording the visuals from one machine onto the other one, playing the visuals to the music, and then transferring them back onto the backup machine, and then playing the show from there. And then what adds up to it is that the time code wasn't working, which means that for some songs, when you have like the synchronized visuals, that didn't work. So I also had to trigger all of that manually.
Oh, man.
And at the end of the show, I really managed to play everything completely perfectly, and it was so satisfying because it was so stressful.
Cool. But you know what is the problem? Probably nobody realized in the room.
No, of course not.
Because you did the show so perfect. Nobody realized what you went through, and then they would see you sweating coming out of the room, and they were like, "Oh, what happened?"
Oh, man.
Of course not, but that's the job, right?
Wow,
Dude, that is fucking crazy. I have one personal question I want to ask you, because this last bit was super interesting, just talking about your own stories. This is personally selfish, but I'm sure there's people watching and listening. You talked about the resources, so you recommended another guy's channel, and there's your own where they can go and learn about VJing. What are the best tools to have in order to start? So if I'm, let's say, a 3D artist or a 2D artist, what software should I learn? Should I go into Unreal? Should I go into Blender, Cinema 4D, Houdini? Should I go to Touch Designer first or Resolume? What's the best way to get in order to get started ASAP?
Sure. Well, I mean, look, if you want to get any projection or visuals out onto any surface, you will need Resolume. And so really the thing that I would learn first is Resolume, and it's also a really intuitive program. So you'll have that in a couple of days. Like the basics, like to be able to play something. So that's really the start. And then what you want to play and what kind of content you want to create. That you can choose later, and you can go to the tool of your choice, like Cinema. I mean, look, I like Cinema because I started with it. It's also very, very good for like motion graphic type stuff. But Blender, just as good. Unreal. Or
let me ask you this. If you're looking at the future, right? You're going to all of these shows. You're seeing what other people are using. If you want to make yourself future-proof, what software would you choose as a 3D software in the VJing world?
Well, I mean, I guess Unreal definitely has some exciting opportunities, right? Like, because it's just not used that much right now, and you can use it both for, rendering content, but then maybe also for playing some content in real time. So that's definitely a super interesting opportunity right there. And then, of course, always, if you manage to master Houdini.
I love it. If you manage
we have to get Orban's help. So we had Orban, the explosion guy, on the podcast.
I know.
I think 3 episodes ago. And when he was talking about Houdini and the way
you
he
could
learned
see him
Houdini,
tearing up.
you could see him crying, even talking about the pain that he went through. So I think if we need any Houdini simulation, we just call Urban. I think that's the easiest
no
choice.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's a nice thing. Like, again, there's the different departments, and you can be the one who plays back the show and who kind of like curates. Maybe you don't even create any of the content yourself, and you're more of like the, just the VJ that operates a show. But you want to find like a way to kind of stand out and find your own like artistic style, right? So whatever medium that is, that's kind of your choice, and that's part of the art form.
Faraz, which department would you choose that you want to join?
Which department?
Yeah.
DJ.
DJ. I'm in the department of crowd.
So overrated.
No. Actually, me and Farah's right. Me and Farah in the department of crowd. Next week, we're just going to be in the crowd.
The department of crowd.
And then when we're there, and if we see any problem with the visual,
I'm going to note it down.
I'm going to note it down, add it to the end of this podcast. So we had Jascha on the podcast. He had problems in his visuals over here.
During the third hour of the visual, we saw 1 second of
one
delay.
glitch was in the visual.
Honestly, I would really appreciate that. I would really appreciate because I know that most people...
you wouldn't. Wait a minute. Let me tell you this. So we
Not
have
during
a team.
the show.
No. We have a team.
Wait. You tell me and then I'll tell you.
No, I'm going to tell him about how much of a pain you can be in the ass. We have a team of 3D artists that we work together. And when there is something comes to review for Faraz, it can come out 3 pages of comments and reviews, and our team members can vouch for that. So I wouldn't ask Faraz for any review. He would send you a report right after the show.
Hey, you know what I'm afraid of, guys? I'm talking to the audience now. What if we go to Ibiza and then we go there and then we're like, Jascha, and then we're looking at him. He doesn't even care we're there. It's like, I don't know these guys.
Do you see
Yo, bro, we met on the podcast.
You're on the podcast.
Yeah. I don't know these guys. Get them out. Oh, man. Dude, you know, it's really exciting learning about the entire world of VJing. And this is the first time we're going really into technicals. When we had Yolis on, we talked to him a lot about his experience at Tomorrowland and how he created what he created, because their team is fascinating as well with what they do. And we've managed to experience that. We've been lucky enough to experience it. But with you as well, the way you democratize the content. And what I really hate is gatekeeping. You know, when you look at different industries and when people learn through many years of hard work and spend time to master a craft, I understand why the first response that they have is to keep it secret, because it's a way they're making money. And in order to stay competitive, you don't want to share the detail. But for people like yourself to come and really show the behind the scenes, you go down to the details of how you store your documents, how you have these 2 different laptops, as you mentioned, Resolume on one and then Touch Designer on another one, how you pack your material. All of these things are really helpful because I'm watching as an outsider and understanding exactly what VJing is, and I can make informed decisions in my life. If I'm a young kid and I want to get into this world, now I know more about it. Back then, if you want to be a VJ, you have no idea what it's about.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, it was the same for me, right? So... And that's exactly also part of the reason why I'm doing it, is because I had no one who once I got on my first international gig, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. When is everyone going to find out, right?
Oh my God. But at the time, you're acting like you know your shit.
Yeah,
you want to get the job.
Of course. But that's always why I thought, if I just had someone or some resource where you could just like figure out that one problem that you're having right now. And oftentimes it's like, of course, it's also valuable to go through the mistake and to go through the error and to learn because you fucked that one thing up. And there's this one setting and this one button that you have to click that fixes everything.
It's always that one setting. It's always that one button that you're spending days and days to fix it. One tiny toggle. Oh, it's fixed.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's part of the journey. But also, again, I see VJing as this art form, and art is really not to be gatekept. Like, let's figure out the technical stuff together, and then we can all focus on what we wanna tell and what kind of story we want to create.
Absolutely, I think that's very well said, Farhad.
I want to ask one final question from Jascha. What do you think the future will look for the VJing industry?
Wow, also a tough one. I mean, we've come to this very interesting point where there's so much attention and so much focus on the visuals, which on the one hand is like the coolest thing ever for me. But at the same time, it's kind of really changing the whole environment. And it's really going to be interesting looking forward, because it feels like, in terms of the size of the stages and the complexity of the setups, I don't know if more will help, creating a better show. So I think it's really going to go into more of a kind of storytelling aspect, and also, which is what Afterlife also, perfected, but it's gonna become, it's gonna become more of like, what do you wanna tell, what do you wanna create, and then, I have no idea what the future will be, honestly.
No, you raised a very good point about storytelling, and I think one of the reasons that the visuals for Afterlife and Tale of Us and Anima, they are very impactful, is actually the story. You can see a lot of DJs are actually using visuals, but whenever Tale of Us, Anima uses a visual, it really always connects to a main story, and you can see it gets shared all over social media.
It's story, it's quality, that level of animation,
and the theme,
and the amount of work they put into it, and the theme, and the interactivity, not with the audience, but the visual and the audio. I remember precisely my first experience with them was Printworks, when you saw the banging on the LED wall, and with the audio reacting to that as well. Yeah. That video was shared by so many people, and
absolutely,
it's a fantastic thing, because I believe what they've done now, they've brought more attention to the world of visuals. They brought more attention to the world of VJing. And so with people like yourself and people like Afterlife and people like Joris doing all these amazing works, you can now see more people are talking about it. It's clear. You can see it in the psyche of social media. More people are interested in how these things work. And I think that's beautiful. So the more tutorials you do, I'm sure more people are just going to come into it as well, because they're interested now.
Yeah, of course. No, definitely. And it's beautiful. But also, I think there's this point where you want to ask, like, what's the purpose of it all, right? Like, are you, why are you attending this kinds of event? And it's interesting how visuals kind of, came from this, and like the whole electronic music scene in general came from like this underground, you don't even see the DJ, right? Like at raves in the 90s. And now you have like the DJ as the superstar, and then the visuals creating this huge spectacle. And it just really changes our whole perception of this type of event in general. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's also like, the story-driven visuals are really interesting, but also sometimes I really appreciate like something that is very abstract and just accentuates the music.
Yes.
And just like, so for me personally, it's about the state where everything, when you're at the show and everything comes together and you close your eyes and then you're in. So like, it's kind of ironic, because all of the parts, like the light, the sound, the visuals, it all helps you to get into the state of like euphoria, right? And then once you're there, I close my eyes and I'm just like in the moment. So it's interesting, because that's one super important aspect for me. And with telling too much of this narrative stories, maybe we're also losing some of that. But at the same time, the beauty of it is that it can be all of it, right? It can be, you can absolutely build like an entire evening and an entire show, and then have moments where you really get into it. And then there's moments where you have something amazing to watch. Then you have moments where it's just about the music and all of that. So
it's about the ups and downs. It's like a cycle. If it's always on, then you won't feel the impact. And if it's always off, then it feels boring. So I feel like having a good balance of having amazing visuals, like you mentioned, and then maybe some quiet moments, some time for you to focus on the music. I think having that balance is really good. But I also agree with you. I think that's a huge discussion, where now some of these shows are becoming more just about the visual. People want to dance and they care more about the music. And then you have some where people are like, no, I want to watch the visuals. I love the visuals. Exactly. I'm coming for the visuals. So I think a balance of both is really good. And you know what? There's always going to be an evolution of how things work. So we'll just have to wait and see how all of this will transcend. And Absolutely. We'll see again when 10 years later we're having that podcast with white hair. We'll have this conversation. But
absolutely looking forward to that.
Absolutely, man. Jascha, it's been a pleasure having you on the pod. We've learned so much, and I hope everybody watching and listening has as well. We'll link down all of the things we talked about in terms of your social and your Discord channel so that people can go ahead and join if they want to learn more about VJing. Thank you so much once again. You've been amazing.
Thank you, guys. It was a huge honor and great talk. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. And to everybody watching and listening, thank you so much. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Until then, ciao.